Would you like to live your best life possible, regardless of your imperfections? Discover cutting-edge tools and inspiration to let go of your limitations and expand your life beyond what you've ever imagined. On Imperfect Brilliance, we help you tap into your unique gifts and talents, uncovering and letting your brilliance shine. Join certified facilitator and coach Betsy McLaughlin as she delves into different areas of your life to get unstuck and create the life that is truly possible for you. Betsy has changed her life by utilizing the tools and techniques she is sharing with you. What if your willingness to acknowledge your brilliance is the catalyst to creating a new reality? When you stop judging you, what else can you create in your life and in the world? Join Betsy live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern to create magical and joyous possibilities for an hour of laughs, questions, tips, and more. We are excited to contribute and play with you.
Hello, welcome to Imperfect Brilliance. I'm obviously not Betsy. I'm Michelle Lyle, filling in for Betsy, at least in this moment, and I get the pleasure today to talk about parenting. It's an interesting thing that she asked me to jump in for her because I'm actually a mom of 5, so I've done a lot of parenting the hardest way, but today we get to talk about using some amazing tools and parenting with the wonderful Maya Dayan. And hi, Maya.
Hello.
Welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we're basically here to talk about parenting and the tools of access consciousness, or at least that's my version of it. And yeah, like I did the hard version, as you say, before I had the tools, and then I had my second child with the tools of access consciousness, and I was excited to speak about this with you, with Betsy, and just see where we can go with it today.
Fantastic. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you found the tools of access?
Yeah.
What was the thing for you? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really intertwined for me with parenting. Since I was pregnant with my second child, it was my third pregnancy. So it was really that in between time after first child, postpartum, all the hardships of discovering how to do this role of being a mother, and really just from the moment I had a first child, I was in that question of like, what can I do different, or how can I not do that action of like all those automatic sentences we heard our mother say, and then we just keep on saying them, or like how to step out of those automatics in and as a parent. And I was searching through all kinds of modalities and using any tool I could find to the best of my abilities, which was going so-so. And then I was kind of in a very dark space in my second pregnancy, since I just had a miscarriage before that. So I was in all that whole stage of like, I don't want to get attached to the baby, etc. And then access came into my life, which was a huge gift for the pregnancy itself, for the birth, and for everything that came after that.
Yeah, I mean, I could only imagine how much greater my journey would have been if I had the tools while I was a young mom. So yeah, I get it. So that's fantastic. And then you've taken your experience farther and become a certified facilitator, and you share the tools of parenting with others. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, so basically as I started the first classes in Access Consciousness, it kind of has an order and not so much. Like you can get to all the tools of Access Consciousness in many different ways, through YouTube, through the books, through Voice America, through radio shows like this. So there's a lot of resources out there, and there are official classes that you go through, and then there are prereq for the next class and the next class. And as I was starting to take those classes, it was very much intertwined with, being a young mom at home, because that was my reality and that was kind of my laboratory of like, these tools are showing up. Okay, I have these cute little creatures at home. Why don't I play with them or see what it creates with them? And with kids, especially at the younger ages, like the response is pretty immediate. So it was just a great platform for me, a great playground. And since that was the stage of my life, kind of those were the people that I were also attracting to my classes, to my bars classes, to any of the classes. It was like I was being that energy as a mom with young kids, but with a different possibility or a different ease with my kids. So just the parenting element kept showing up during classes, and it didn't matter so much which class it was. It was just present there, and it was great.
Well, that's fantastic to be able to get the tools in the middle of it and use them and notice the difference right away. So I like to sometimes think like the person listening to this call, and I'm wondering, what would you say to a mom who's has two young children at home, and she's trying to juggle an online business and two toddlers under the age of 3, and they're just all over the place, yelling, screaming, chaotic. What would you say to her?
Yeah, no, this is awesome, because there's those questions kind of give you an idea of where to go. But yeah, it's really what the tools gave me as a parent is both. It was like less judgment of myself, of the situation, of the kids, and the more I could tap into that, the more our day could be different, and it could be very little things. It really depends on the age of the kids, especially on those hectic years. But because I would say that I was doing, when I only had one child, there was I was doing different things with parenting and looking for alternative ways, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the thread of judgment was always there. Is this the right thing to do? Is this the wrong thing to do? Is this the right thing to feed her? Is this the wrong thing to feed her? And the amount of energy that we spend on that is just doubles that amount of overwhelm that we have from the work itself, So, and it's not exactly a tool to start to get rid of judgment. It's more something that shows up when you start running bars, access bars, or when you start asking the questions that are available with Access Consciousness. It's one more tool and another tool and another tool, and then these layers of judgment just start leaving your world, and it just gives you space for more choice, basically. It's it would never look for one young mom with 2 children under the age of 3 with an online business and another mom with 2 young children and an online business. It could look totally different, what the tools would create for them.
Right. Yeah. So what would you say was the big aha moment of I'm using these tools and they're changing my life?
With the kids, it was really cool because, for instance, the access bars for many adults, like it can show up that there's a big change after one session, but not necessarily. Like it could be that we accumulated things for so many years and it takes time to release. And when I started kind of experimenting with my 5-year-old, which means touching lightly 32 points on her head for like 5 minutes when she's already in bed and tired, not trying to do any big session or anything. But like, for instance, there was a month or a period where she was like getting way more introvert, and like she didn't want to go to see friends, and then she didn't want to touch paint or glue, or like everything became an issue. Like, and so I tried the bars one night, and the day after we were at friends, she was naked in the mud playing with other kids, and I was like, wow, that's that easy. Like,
yeah. So say more about running bars with kids. I think, people who are new to it or curious about it, I know when I first came into bars, I thought like I had to torture my kids and make them sit still for an hour and a half, but that's not the case. So say more about running bars with kids.
Okay, I'll start with the fact that I don't do it often at all. Like with my kids, at this point already, it's been about 5 years, so it's also an element that they can just ask me if they want. But even beforehand, like I never came with that energy of, I'm going to do this on you and we will change things. It was like that night of experimenting on her with that curiosity of, I wonder what this will create, was a great example of like, I think that was a year after I learned the bars, and it was the first time I ever ran bars on her. So it was like kind of waiting for the moment to show up. And it's not wrong. Like if you learn the bars and the day after, you're like, I'd love to try this on my kids. It's not that, but it was like, I could just sense energetically, like if it's a thing for them or more a thing, like as a mom, that was a great example of like, that was a tool that I added to my life to create more ease and more receiving for me. And then I could be more present for them. So I didn't really see it as a tool for them, quote unquote, but it was like when the moment came, it was just that ease of, she can let go of things so much more faster and easier than an adult. Like that was just a gift.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love how you said that it was a tool for you as a mom versus one for your kids, because, I noticed in this reality, with parenting, it's always focused on how to change the kids and how to adapt the kids and how to make the kids do something different. And I love that you touched on you use the tools for you, and then that changed you in parenting, and your kids could just be your kids.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that ripple effect of choosing the change for you, and they get to choose it, not choose it, but the ripple effect is there. And also that was a big part of, I didn't really know how to do things for me. Like when I just had my first child, I don't remember moments of doing that. So the bars definitely are part of adding that to my life.
Say more about that. Are you saying that that's a way that you take care of you?
I'm saying that I still remember moments that my husband would be like, okay, like you can go out for 2 hours now. And the kid, my daughter was probably like 2.5, something like that. And I would just walk around for 2.5 hours, like not knowing where to go, what to do with myself, like had that total element of like, who am I, and losing myself in motherhood. And the access bars really started to release and change that. So that was an extra gift and element that I wasn't necessarily looking for when I found Access, but it just started creating itself in my life and being that gift for the whole family of like, okay, you're not with your mom hat 24/7. We like you better that way too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, getting to be you. That's a concept. That's fun. So, yeah, that's amazing. So with parenting and doing the bars and finding the shifts and picking up the tools, we say tools, we talk about access consciousness. It's easy to go find them, but do you have, your go-to tools that work in your family situation?
Yeah. So I was listening to a lot of Access Consciousness on Voice America. That was the beginning of it. And pretty much anything Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, and Dane here were talking about that had to do with, they have a lot of examples with kids, which is amazing. But it was like everything they mentioned on the show, I was like, okay, I'll just experiment with it. It wasn't an expectation, or I was just curiosity. Let's see. Oh, they're talking about choice creates awareness. Let's see how this applies with my kids. Oh, they're talking about 10 seconds of choice. Let's see how this applies with my kids. Like they just mentioned, and there's a beautiful thing from Dane, which Gary Douglas actually told him, but he mentions it a lot, which is, what if you were to treat your child the way you should have been treated as a kid instead of the way you were treated? And kind of took that sentence along with me, because that's like an example of, it's not exactly an immediate tool. It's more like a question that you let it seep through all your choices. And not judging you along the way.
Yeah, that's a great question. Can you say it again?
Yeah, sure. So it's, what if you were to treat your child the way you should have been treated as a kid instead of the way you were treated?
Wow. Yeah, I like that. That's awesome.
So even just having that question was like,
yeah. Well, I think we're going
degrees.
I think we're going to commercial break, so we'll get back to that question when we return.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organisation, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Are you looking to change anything in your life, to have an even greater appreciation of everything around you? Would you enjoy having a life of more joy and greater abundance, and explore what is possible for you? My name is Betsy McLaughlin, and I invite you to explore simple and pragmatic tools that I share on my radio show, Imperfect Brilliance. I know firsthand that you can change anything. We explore tools and questions with amazing guests, offering all kinds of conversations on living your best life. I invite you to listen in Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern to Imperfect Brilliance. Consider a coaching call with me, and let's explore what you would like your life to be like. Visit my website at www.creatingyumminess.com, and you're invited to call into Imperfect Brilliance with your questions Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I look forward to connecting.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Imperfect Brilliance. I'm Michelle Lyle, and I have the privilege of speaking to Maya today about parenting and the tools of access consciousness. Welcome back, Maya.
Okay.
So before break, you had delivered us an amazing question to ask as a parent, and how that was instrumental in starting your journey using the tools with your family. And we'd like to know more about these tools and how you use them in parenting. So what else would you like to share?
So the thing for me with taking the classes of access consciousness was really that place where it was starting to do that unlearning of all the things that were limiting us, that we kind of accumulate through the journey of our life so we could have greater choices, greater possibilities, everything that's stuck in our life. And having young kids around at that same time, it was like, why would they have to go through all of that and then get to that point at 20, 30, 40, doesn't matter what age, of like starting to unlearn again? So it was just really a privilege for me to take the tools and start implementing them with my children at home, and just, it's total choice. Like, they don't have to use the tools or choose what I'm choosing or anything like that. It's just that invitation of starting life from a different starting point than we had, basically.
Yeah, I love that. It's just, you can just tell there's just so much more ease and more fun. I think you can have more fun when you're not trying to get it right and judging yourself as a parent. And so, you know, when you're working with other parents and using the tools, what are some of the things that come up the most, and what would you say is a great way to navigate that?
Yeah, well, the judgment is a big thing, and it really unravels for each of us. It could take a period of time. Like, I couldn't see exactly all the judgments I had as a parent prior to access, and also while I started adding more bar sessions to my life, or start the use of the tools more and more, like, I couldn't really see linearly what was changing, but I just knew that it was getting easier and easier, and there was this less and less pressure. So that's really for you to look at, like, can you recognize the place that you have, that you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself as a mom, or like where are areas that everybody's tense around with, like in your family, or like I could start just recognizing those areas that I put a lot of pressure there, and just start to see how I can implement my tools to change them. And it really is connected to what we were talking about earlier, of making that space for myself, or like just there's a tool in Access of adding half an hour or an hour a day for you and a day a week for you, which might be a huge leap for some people, and not everybody implements that. But as a mom, like I know that there's at least one mom that took that suggestion, and she started waking up before her kids and drinking that cup of coffee, that cup of tea in silence, or with some wonderful inspirational radio show, whatever, just adding that moment to herself, and how much energy that added to the rest of her day. So it's both changing the way that we can be with our kids, and also changing the way that we be with us, which changes everyone's day, basically.
Yeah, I think that I know for me as a mom, I've been parenting for 31 straight years. I'm not yet quite done. Have 2 more to go. I'm on the home stretch, but I think what you're speaking to is probably one of the biggest challenges I've had in parenting, is having any amount of space for myself, any amount of time for myself. And so I think that that's key. And I love that you said like an hour a day and a day a week. And man, if you can manage both of those, that I can just imagine the space and freedom that would feel like as a full-time parent.
And what's amazing with it is it just starts with that initial choice that, okay, I don't have an hour. What if I'm willing to take 30 minutes? What if I'm willing to take 20 minutes? Like, where can I choose this and not, we're always going to like, no, it's not possible. And I mean, even for me, like looking at my routine nowadays, and I still have 2 young kids running around here, like they're homeschooled. And it's like, I see a lot in mom groups and mom forums that, like it seems that the average is to take a moment for yourself, maybe once a month, maybe like an hour every other week for something nurturing. And for me, it's now a daily ritual. So that just gives you a total different space to be a parent from.
Yeah, I mean, and it's as easy as adding it into your schedule, like you're saying. Like, I don't think that we think like that when we have the responsibility of other people on our plates. So, I mean, that's incredible. One of the things you just mentioned, and I think it's a hot topic right now everywhere, is you're homeschooling your children. So a lot of parents weren't intending to homeschool their children and are now homeschooling their children, or, maybe coming out from the other side of having to do that. And so how do you use the tools and manage that to make it where it's fun and joyful for your family?
Yeah, I mean, one of the gifts of the tools, again, it was like initially I had a lot of right and wrong around the school system, and I was letting that go more and more and more, and getting to a point where my daughter can choose if she wants to go to school or doesn't want to go to school, which I think is more fun for all of us. And in a sense, it was very interesting because last year, no doubt, we were prepared for the world change. But also, whoever wasn't prepared, it was like this, the world is saying, are these systems working? What is going on? And everybody was at home for a moment with their kids, and not everybody necessarily, but whoever is open to these kinds of questions or just interest in consciousness or change or alternative approaches, it was like, okay, so what relationship do I want to have with my children? I was having a few conversations last year with moms that, were suddenly thrown into that situation. And it was kind of cool because they took suddenly an hour to themselves to listen to a lecture, to, an evening about conscious parenting, which was probably not the reality before that. So it was like, maybe even if it just created that place where you're like, oh, so like, okay, we're running this routine and we know where everybody goes, and then suddenly nobody knows where anybody goes. So, okay, now what? What would I like to create? What would I like the relationship be with my kids, And it doesn't have to be like, for me, I would say that we're very happy with our situation, but that's the key. Like, if somebody's really happy with their work 12 hours per day and that their kids are taken care of with other schools, nannies, whatever that is, but like, how can you do that with no guilt, with no blame, with like, just really enjoying it? And then when you do meet your kids, like, how much more quality time do you have if you're creating it the way that works for you, really?
Yeah. I mean, I think even just myself, like my kids are teenagers, and, they're pretty much independent, doing their own thing. But when, the lockdown happened and they stayed home, it disrupted my world, and it disrupted their world because I wasn't used to having them in the house all day. So, we had to rally and adjust, and it took a little bit of time, and we used the tools too. So, it wasn't an extraordinary shift, but we definitely noticed and had to navigate that differently. So, one of the things that you said, did you say that you had a conscious parenting group that you were part of?
No, I was just creating conversations here in Vancouver for moms. Like,
oh, nice.
It was pretty much around, March, April last year. And it wasn't long term or anything, but it was just very interesting to tap into all those people that their situation suddenly changed. And I just kind of offered short conversations around conscious parenting. And I was just, it was that delight of, out of that moment of crisis, we were just, first of all, offering, as I said, all those little tools like adding half an hour a day, and I gave them a lot of questions that they could use with the specific situations that they were presenting. But it was just that moment of like, okay, this is happening. And I even asked them, like, let's say this would be happening. Like, everybody was in that sense of like, this is short term. This will be just for the next month, and then everything will go back to normal. And I was asking them, like, if it's not going to go back to normal, what would you like to choose? It kind of brings you to a new place of like just looking at your life as a parent with your kids, with the daily routines and all that, and just suddenly there's a whole different ballgame.
Right. Well, I think that's incredible to have, just being able to have the conversation about conscious parenting and just, allow people to know that there's something different. Like, like I said, I've been parenting for 31 years. So I didn't even know there was such a thing as conscious parenting. And I know a lot of people still don't really know that there's such a thing as conscious parenting. So, just allowing that conversation to be available, this conversation to be available, and then the things that you put out into the world for people to, show up and be able to know that there is a different choice, and they don't have to judge themselves, and they don't have to do it the hard way. One of the things that you talked about in the beginning of this conversation was and I wanted to come back around because it's one of the things that I've thought about a lot as a parent, is to not repeat the same things that your parents repeated at you. Those phrases that you hear, it comes out of your mouth and you're like, oh, that was my mom, or, oh, that was my dad. I have a funny story that my daughter, sometimes I'm like, hey, do you need this? Here, can I give you some food or whatever when she comes to visit? And she's like, stop being your dad. So it's just funny how there's certain things that we just pick up as parents from our parents. And I think that there's a lot of us who also don't want to repeat some of the things that were said to us, and we unconsciously can do that. And so how have the tools contributed to you not choosing that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's another break in about a minute. So let's see where we can go and continue from there. Yeah, that was really something that I noticed with, when I got to the age where all my friends around me, when we all started becoming parents suddenly, and you almost see this extra layer of unconsciousness that you never knew was there because you don't have it before you're a parent. And it's almost like those things, like when you get married, suddenly these sentences come out, or when you become a parent, these sentences come out. And I was just like, I definitely, that was like a very clear goal from the beginning. And, if you do it from that resistance of like, no, I do not want to be like my mom or dad, then for the most part, you won't get anywhere with it, really. But if you add that curiosity and I mean, we have a clearing statement in Access, which is basically designed to get us out of those unconscious places, where those tapes come from. So using that helps a lot, and it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing, and it keeps showing up differently. So it's kind of like that question that we talked about before, about treating your kid the way you should have been. So it's kind of similar. It's like, what will it take for me to be aware of those moments and choose differently? And it's ongoing, like it's not one choice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we are going to go to break here now, any second. There we go. We'll be right back.
Connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
And we're back. This is Perfect Brilliance. I'm Michelle Lyle, and we're speaking with Maya Dayan, and we're talking about parenting and using the tools of Access Consciousness. Maya, with all of your experience in parenting and Access Consciousness tools, what are things that you're offering out into the world in ways that people can, get in touch with you and receive some brilliance from you?
Well, I started to do a conversation once a month, at least, around parenting beyond judgment, which is a taster of everything we spoke about today, just more in depth with the tools, with using the clearance statement, with a lot of the questions and elements from Access Consciousness, and private sessions, and I do all kinds of things that are growing nowadays and adding more and more.
Well, that conversation sounds amazing. I'm asking because I have a couple of friends with young children, and I'm thinking like, wow, they could really love that. Getting in touch with you. So I was thinking about that when we were on break, and that conversation that you have once a month sounds pretty amazing to tap into.
So that's on Maya Dayan CF on Facebook. That's I update the time and date of the conversation there. And you mentioned conscious parenting, so I just that you didn't know it was available when you were around and all that. So I just kind of wanted to say my version of what that is. That'd be great. A lot of things, like there are things out there that are called conscious parenting, but I don't know. I found that Access's version of consciousness definitely makes the conversation way broader and wider, and it's that definition that consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. So it's that place where in a lot of parenting forums you will find what's right, what's wrong, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and here we just offer a lot of questions for you to basically find your way of parenting. And if there is no right and if there is no wrong, what would make it a greater, more fun journey for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. And just thinking about that, a lot of times we get locked into definitions of things and consciousness having a definition, but imagine not judging yourself as a parent. Imagine not judging everything that you do on a daily basis with your children as right or wrong, or, what it's going to create with them.
And it's
that's a lot of freedom.
Yeah, and it's even intimidating because it goes so against everything we're presented. Like, you should know, and you should be prepared, and there should be this amount of meals a day, and there's a lot of should-haves when you pretty much from the moment you're a few weeks into pregnancy and you start getting the should-haves from the doctors and the nurses. But it's a total different paradigm. And it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and maybe, do you have any examples from your life of how much fun you're having parenting?
I think a big one that has to do with what I just mentioned is that trust. We totally lose the trust in ourselves, because this book says this, and this doctor says this, and this nurse says this, and also as a society, we're no longer in the tribe, so we did lose that element of instincts of trusting, our mothering skills, etc., or don't have our mother and grandma and great grandma to kind of guide us through that, and so there is a lot of, on the one hand, that loneliness. On the other hand, you're feel that you have no clue. So where do you go from there? And it was really a process of trusting myself more and more and more and more to empower myself to what I know and just going from there, basically.
I mean, I think that's like key is like trusting yourself and getting to a place where you can. And, I mean, how achievable is that in the everyday world without the tools? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I used the tools and I'm still working on trusting myself, especially in parenting. I think, for me personally, parenting is like my biggest role in this world, you know, because I'm launching humans out into the world, into society. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I want them to, you know, be set up for success as much as possible. So, you know, that's where, I mean, I don't know about other parents, but that's where, you know, you want to get it right. You want to make sure. And, you know, it doesn't matter. I have 5 children and they are all different. And they all, what one thinks I contributed to them, the other one thinks I did against them, and vice versa. And it's just insane. So at some point, you kind of just got to be okay with getting it wrong, because you're literally not going to get it right.
Yeah.
No matter what you do. So, you know, trusting yourself is key, and that you're, you know. Yeah. Go ahead.
And like trusting yourself doesn't mean necessarily that you don't look for those materials or those teachers, or it just gives you more that navigating through what's light for you, what sounds like more fun, or that creates this joy energy, or that space in your world of like, oh, this will contribute, and just you start navigating more energetically what's true for you, basically. And it's really hard to narrow it down to a few minutes, but that's the process of trust, which does not mean I'm all alone and I cannot use resources now. It's just more what would work for my family. Like, even if this book says do this, what if 2 out of these 7 suggestions do work for me? Like, am I willing to take only those 2 and implement them and ignore the rest, and be okay with that?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's key, just taking what works for you and leave the rest. And I mean, in anything, but I think there's so many experts today, and there's so many things that we are subjected to, that you have to choose this and you have to choose this and you have to choose this school, and they have to be ready for college at 18, and, you know, everything in the middle, to use these diapers, all those things. You could get lost in a sea if you weren't asking questions for yourself.
Yeah, which was definitely the case for me with my first child, and that was the gift of adding those tools. And it's really hard to explain what the session of bars, which is somebody touching 32 points on your head, what it adds to start creating that for you as a parent. But it's really more that invitation to look it up if it creates any curiosity in your world. But it was adding that and releasing more and more of the judgment, of the distrust, of like all of the things that were limiting me from enjoying this journey. And just like what you said is perfect, because if we could have that humor of like, we're going to be guilty no matter what, of like whatever you did or didn't do, it's your fault as a parent. So how much humor can we have around it? How much lightness, how much fun, and how much can it be not so serious?
Right, exactly. And, you know, I love that you brought the conversation back around to bars. A few years ago, I was doing bars at an outdoor kind of a festival thing, and this little girl who was 2 or 3 years old, she came over and she just stared at me for a while and my chair, and then she left, and then she came back like dragging her mom by her arm and made her mom sit in the chair and get bars, which was so interesting to me. And so it's still fascinating to me it was almost like the little girl knew that there was something that was going to change the way her mom was with her, you know? It was just really cool.
Yeah, and a lot of times, as you mentioned at the beginning, people talk about, my child has this, so what do we do? Or like it's always focused on the issue, the current issue that's going on with the kid. And that's kind of the energy that I was choosing, what that little girl was choosing. It was like, okay, I'll put myself on the massage table and my kids, like everyone will benefit from this basically.
And say more about that, when like you choosing this and then how that the ripple effect for the rest of your family.
Well, that's another great thing there's 2 books that Access Consciousness have. One is called Conscious Parents, Conscious Kids, and the other one is called Possibilities in Parenting, which you can find both of them on accessconsciousness.com. But it kind of goes with one of the writers here. Her name is Heather Nichols. It's just parent stories, basically, who facilitate Access Consciousness and are parents, so they're kind of telling their story. But in her story, she was kind of asking, like, who do you know had a parent who gave themselves up, and like that the child was grateful for them for doing that, for, you know, like that, which is kind of like the automatic sentences thing. It's a similar thing that, like, we learn as mothers that we should give ourselves up for our children. And what if that's not a complete truth? So what can we add to our lives that, like, makes us with a fuller cup, that we don't keep showing up in our family with that empty, deflated, you know, what a mom is supposed to be kind of energy.
Right. And I know that too well. I know that too well. For the first 10 years of my parenting, that was my life. And then I made a big change, and, you know, my kids are mostly grown now, and they all can reflect, the older ones can reflect back to how I used to be versus how I am now. And, you know, they say they're just grateful that I stopped, like, eliminating me from the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, you know, it's key. Like, and I mean, just to kind of recap a little bit, like, you gave some really cool pointers, you know, like taking that question, you know, asking that question, and then taking time for yourself, whether you start with 30 minutes a day, or you can go all in and do an hour a day and add a day a week. Like, that's just incredible. And things that I don't think that we would give ourselves permission to do normally, or that we would be taught to do, or that another mother would tell us to do without the tools.
Yeah, I think on the Access Consciousness website in general, if you search for Conscious Parents, Conscious Kids, you would probably find lots of other resources that I haven't mentioned here, because Access is really great with having a lot of stuff about everything. And it can be sometimes overwhelming, but it can also be like just taking one thing and trying it out and see what it starts creating in your life. And then perhaps you choose to add more and more and more of that. So that's another suggestion, to just see, like, even that thing of, like, I start adding half an hour every day and look a month later where that puts me, like, what's my well-being like now, or what's my mood like now. It's just, it can start changing a lot of things.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm thinking, like, do I do that? Have I been doing that? I do, but I'm in a different stage of parenting, but I definitely did not give myself permission to do that when my kids were young. And I think that is just such a gift, to just reorient yourself every day with yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that anyone who's listening to this conversation can find you. And so if you want to say the ways to find you again.
Sure. So I'm on the Access Consciousness website, which is www.accessconsciousness.com. And then if you search for facilitators by name, then you just type in Maya Dayan and you have my contact there, which is one way. I have a website, which is www.mayagdayan.com. And on Facebook, I'm Maya Dayan CF. And yeah, what will it take to have lots of happy parents and happy kids and create a different planet?
Yeah, and what would it take? And just before we go, I just want to recap on letting go of judgment. Just stop judging you. You got it right. Well, thank you, Maya. It's been incredible getting to talk to you today, and that is the end of our show. And please look up Maya if you need any resources for parenting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.